Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And with this one, we're going to be doing a PvP analysis, a PvP breakdown, and looking at the changes that are coming into Tuesday and the representation of the classes and performance of the classes to see what are going to be possibly the results of the decisions that they are making for Tuesday. Specifically, the Arena World Championship Week 2 just concluded, which also gave us a lot of data points to look at and talk about. I think the first thing that we should talk about is Death Knight, because they are the ones receiving the most significant of nerfs, with 15% to basically all of their core damage, death coil, and their dots. I think most specifically their single target damage is being hit incredibly hard, and these nerfs seem intended to target their balance around Battleground Blitz with no compensation for Arena. And given their representation, it is fairly high, right? We're seeing this at about 17% in Solo Shuffle at 2100 plus. I'd say 2400 plus, but there's not a single player there. If we look at 1800 plus, they are the number one melee at 22%. They have significant representation on the ladder overall in all content of the game. But in AWC, Death Knights are very rarely, if almost ever, winning a single arena match. So at the highest level of play, they are definitely struggling. It seems like these nerfs are pretty heavy-handed with no compensation towards their single target. Perhaps not going after Death Coil, at least. If it is apparent that their dot damage in Battlegrounds is too high, could likely be, supporting that here. But I do kind of expect that their representation and their power is going to go down. I mean, just given the fact that they were not doing so well in tournaments, right? So Unholy DK is probably going to drop quite significantly from the number 2 position. Feral Druids are actually in the number 1 position, which is surprising, because Feral Druid is usually not that popular, and even at 1800 they're in the number 4 position, which says that they're a little bit more difficult for beginners, but when you're able to play it at its maximum potential, you're going to see a lot of success with it. And we saw Feral Druids basically in both regions, Europe and North America. Was even opting for the Feral Druid. Most of the top level rogues in some situations opting for a little bit of Feral Druid if they have it practiced and polished at that level. And then in North America as well, with Welcome to Zheng running the Feral Mage Holy Paladin. But with Feral Druid specifically, I think they're pretty much just getting buffs. So for Feral Druid, their Wildstalker Vines is just getting increased by 10%. And I think that was it specifically for Feral Druid, which was very surprising to not see. Oh, I guess they're getting a little bit of a nerf towards their percentage maximum health. I don't think this is as heavy-handed as the Unholy DK. While it is going to be noticeable, especially towards their lethality, the Feral Druid damage just profile seems to be really high, and the tankiness seems to be really high. So this seems like a very light tap on the slap on the wrist really for Feral Druid. I don't really think it's going to be going anywhere from this number 1 position. Fury Warrior, I think, still has some lingering results from earlier in the expansion before it got nerfed. You can see it in the number 2 position and basically the number 3 position, depending on what rating threshold you're looking at. And for Warrior specifically, for Fury, we're seeing defensive stance be increased by 5%. Now, again, I think this representation is still lingering effects of Fury Warrior. Your Bladestorm damage is still pretty minor. I'm trying to remember the PvE changes specifically for Fury. You're getting more damage on your set bonuses here, which is likely going to compensate for that. Some hero talent adjustments as well. I was talking to Bajira, and he was thinking about trying some Mountain Thane out with these damage increases. I'm not sold if this is really enough for making them viable in an arena setting. But we also see some nerfs to Bladestorm. So, it trades off. Set bonus is getting stronger, defense is getting stronger, which is certainly a plus. But Bladestorm is kind of like your key moment. So Fury Warrior will probably remain about the same where it is. We did see Demon Hunter buffs, and I think specifically I saw a lot of players who main Demon Hunter talking about the Eldrachi Reaver changes actually being pretty big. So it is possible with these numbers coming into Havoc that this is a significant damage increase alongside the PvP specific ones. And we pretty much have seen close to zero representation of Demon Hunter in tournament settings. And that's apparent as well on the leaderboard, with only 4% representation at 2100 plus, and at 1800 only 2%. And remember, in Dragonflight, I think even in the most recent season or the last season of Dragonflight, Demon Hunter was up here at like 30%. And Demon Hunter is not seen as like the most complicated class to play. It has a strong fantasy with Illidan. So you would think based on popularity and simplicity that it would be up on the charts if it was performing adequately enough. So these buffs could potentially skyrocket its representation. We could see a huge shift in that. It makes sense to buff it, I think, to a significant margin given these numbers. Like usually Demon Hunter is not as low as something like Outlaw Rogue or even Survival Hunter, given how popular the fantasy is and how simple its gameplay is, generally speaking. So these are likely going to be very positive, but could actually put it over the top. This is a spec that could jump from the bottom basically to the top of the charts. Saw that as an outlier. To me, it seems like Windwalker is in a decently healthy position, and I think that it also got some changes along with already like a pretty strong spot that it's in, and I'm trying to remember what they were specifically, so we're just going to scroll through this so we don't miss a single beat here with this one. We're seeing Mastery of Harmony. We are seeing Conduit of the Celestials. So this is much like Demon Hunter. This could have massive implications as far as your hero talents are concerned. So definitely check out the Celestial Conduit, but even with that, Monk is probably just going to stay here in a solid spot. It's winning matches at tournament level. It's really good on ladder. Again, its main pain points are like frustrations of getting kited by range DPS, and I don't really see that going away, but its representation will probably still remain decently high despite this. Rep Paladin, it's kind of low, right? 7.3%. We're not seeing it really in tournament whatsoever, but Rep Paladin is getting a big overhaul to its Templar tree. Basically with buffs across the board to this. So Templar could potentially shake things up similarly to the Demon Hunter changes. It makes sense for that to be going through to try and bump this up. Not that it's like at a terrible margin, but again, Ret was like Demon Hunter. It was like up here at like the 20%. So I think this buff is good. It's going to draw some attention to it, bring it up, get Ret Paladins experimenting a little bit more. And it could end up being kind of like the counter to the Ferals and the Rogues, because Ret typically ends up being like the king of the melee DPS in that regard. So I think this is great what they've done here, targeting this, increasing the viability of Ret, opening up their hero talent trees. This is likely going to be going in a great direction for them. For Arms Warrior, it's the same thing. You're getting the defensive stance buff, but you're also seeing the Bladestorm nerfs. So a little bit of a trade-off, although I think you are getting more than Fury specifically here with execute damage at 15%, Mortal Strike damage at a 20% increase from where it was currently at. I don't think this Master Commander thing is going to have too much of implications. It's mostly just raw throughput and you're a little bit more tanky. So definitely could be enough to at least bump it up maybe towards, 9%. I still don't think you're even close to Feral Druid level of survivability, or even in a lot of cases Death Knight survivability, but it's definitely not nothing. So definitely big wins here for Arms Warrior on that front. For Frost Death Knight, I don't remember seeing anything specifically for you. Now, they do note that this is for Unholy only, so hopefully it's not targeting your Frost Fever as Frost. But Death Knight specifically, I don't think you're really going to get anything. It doesn't look like it, which is really unfortunate because obviously like Frost is down here with Demon Hunters. Not seeing a lot of it. Basically no tournament play. Not a lot of ladder play. So Frosty K is kind of getting left behind here, it seems, with this most recent update. Outlaw Rogue, it looks okay because, I mean, we're seeing a tournament level, but I guess it's mostly just it's competing with Subtlety and Assassination, which are like really outshining it. I think you're getting a minor increase to your damage, if I remember correctly. Yeah, like a 6% to dispatch, 4%. I don't really think this is enough to like massively shift where you currently are sitting. It's definitely better than nothing, but it's not like jumping off the page to me as far as like you're going to just take over the ladder and suddenly be the best spec in the game, right? Enhance, you're not getting anything to my memory here. You're getting Healing Stream Totem healing. So a little bit more healing focused on Enhance specifically. Again, probably not enough to shift the fact that like you just can't get to most of the targets in the game. And given the nerfs that are coming to the next class, which we're going to look at for range DPS, it's going to be a bit hard for you. Survival, I think you're very similar to Outlaw. You might be getting like some minor changes, but I don't think it's going to be, some minor buffs and increases to these spells. I think Marksman is still kind of dwarfing you in terms of like overall representation. I've been really enjoying Marksman as well as Beast Mastery. Those are both just like they're performing so far over the top. Although I think this is correct for them to target the survivability. I think it's definitely a little bit over the top, which could bring down overall Hunter representation, which we can see now moving on to the range DPS. That's pretty much where Marksman is sitting. Subtlety, we're not seeing really anything, and it's just really good. So I'm Yeah, Subtlety Rogue is probably not going to move. I think the main reason this representation is lower is that it's just harder to play. It plays completely different than any other spec in the game. So if you don't understand all the little intuitive things with it, it's going to be really difficult to make it work. But given how strong it is, it definitely has a higher representation than it typically does. I feel like it's usually around 2%. So it's definitely in a solid spot. You really solid BG Blitz spec as well. I'd say the best one in the game. So it's probably going to keep on creeping up as far as representation. But when we look at ranged, we can see Marksmanship Hunter. It's doing phenomenal. You know, it's at the top bracket there, almost at the top of the bracket of the higher end of the ladder as well. And targeting its defense, I think that's a fair direction to go for it. Again, glass cannon, be really blasting out damage. So I'm glad that they're looking at that specifically. I think that that's a great direction. Might pull it down a bit, but I don't think it's going to pull it down a huge amount. Whereas the Affliction Warlock changes likely are going to do that. For Affliction Warlock, which I don't know why I can't find right now. I think it's because I'm too high on the list here. Affliction Warlock is receiving huge nerfs to core components of its burst build. A lot of Warlocks think they can just go Hellcaller and everything will be good. So maybe this is just the death. I'm spacing out of the name of the hero talent tree now for it. The death of the other hero talent tree for Affliction, and everybody just goes Hellcaller and it's all good because they buffed your tankiness. And you were really squishy. So, you know, 50% more armor almost basically against all these physical damage dealers is definitely going to be felt. So I think if we switch over to Hellcaller, maybe this representation drops down a little bit. I'm sad because I like the Haunt Shadowbolt burst builds and I don't really want to play Hellcaller personally out of preference. But as far as viability, you're probably going to switch over and it's still going to be really good. For Shadow Priest, what's interesting with this is it already had pretty decent representation, even at lower ratings, which it typically doesn't, at 12% at lower ratings. And it's number 3 here at the highest ratings. And it got the biggest buffs of any of the specs. It got the Void Weaver. It's going to be doing really good, is my expectation. It's just, it already was starting to see a little bit of pickup here, and with the reductions to the burst damage of Affliction Lock, then Shadow can kind of be that dot burst spec specifically. So I do expect Shadow to kind of shoot up, which is surprising because it's already up here at the top. It's going to be doing really good. Elemental, same type of deal. It seems like Elemental is actually doing fine. At least at tournament level, it's winning tournament matches, taking out some of the best teams. Seems like it's lacking a little bit of just like overall pressure, but its Earth Shocks are hitting really high. Unfortunately, the only thing you're really seeing is the Healing Stream buff, which is not nothing. And then your Lightning build. So possibly checking out the Tempest build. I think in BGs it's probably going to be more viable, but in arenas where if you got multiple melee, I don't see that working out, but I'm glad that they're looking at making sure like multiple hero trees are viable. I think that's exactly what they need to be doing at this point in time, and it's in a decent spot for representation. So yeah, the Shaman changes I think are likely good here. Maybe a little bit of an increase to Lava Burst would have been nice, but you know, I definitely don't think that was it's gonna be like terribly affecting you. Devastation Evoker, you're towards the top. You're seeing tournament play. You know, 15% at lower ratings and 7% here at the absolute highest level of the ladder. And I can't remember, I don't think you guys are seeing anything really significant that's going to just completely shift the direction of your specialization and take it out of the game. We do see flame shaper changes, but most people are playing Scale Commander as Devastation. So you're just happy. You're just a happy camper. You're already doing really good. Beast Mastery Hunter, I think, is the same deal, but I actually think your damage is going up, at least if you're switching targets a lot. The Basilisk Collar stacking damage is going down if you're tunneling, but this 18% kill command and 4% pet damage, considering Call of the Wild is such a significant portion, as well as the Dark Hounds. Actually, we saw them in the tournament from the Dark Ranger. So BM Hunter, you're a really happy camper. You're probably going up from this. Destro Lock, same deal here for you with the tankiness improvements towards you. You're going to be loving that with the armor increases. So Destro, that's great direction for them. Their damage was already feeling really good, so bringing up their tankiness. Frost Mage's representation has fallen off a cliff. This was like the #1 representation in all brackets. It fell off at the top end. It's starting to fall off here. Seems like it's still decent though. I would definitely not say like it's still winning tournaments, still winning cups, and it's getting buffs. It's getting massive buffs. So Frost is probably going to jump up a lot, even from this little initial fall off that it had. Frost Mage is going to, yeah, I think that one's going to be galloping straight to the top. Balanced Druid, you know, you're really weak defensively, and I don't think you're seeing any changes targeted to that specifically. We're seeing nothing for the overall tree on Tuesday. And then in PvP specifically, we're seeing nothing. So Boomkin's going to basically be if you're a Boomkin main and you're trying to make it work, you'll find a way to make it work. I've been making it work. Been trying to work on getting a guide. I wanted to get to 2400 before making a guide. That's typically the threshold that I get to, but as you can see, nobody is 2400. So if I make a guide on something, please don't tell me, oh my god, he's only 2100, because 2100 is literally the top of the ladder. I don't want to hear any comments about this, okay? But Boomkin's probably still going to be just for the super try hard Boomkin mains. Demonology, you're going to love those tanky buffs. A lot of pet damage increase. Demonology is likely going to like this. You're going to be bumping up, I think, at least a lot. And Fire Mage is the big wild card, because you're good. The changes for Mage are just absolutely insane. Like, apparently there's a possible Scorch build that's going to be crazy coming up from this with a 300% increase, and you're bottom of the barrel, 0.43%, and you could just everybody, like, Mage stonks are going up again. They were kind of on the downturn, but they're going up again. Arcane, I think you're receiving some PvP specific changes as well, which is definitely not nothing. And I do think that they needed some of their overall sustained damage going up, considering how much more difficult it is to actually do damage. It should be more rewarding than Ice Lance as Frost. So definitely good changes there for Arcane. You're likely going to see a little bit of a resurgence here. Disc Priest still continues to dominate pretty much tournament play and ladder play, and I don't think we saw any specific changes to them. I was honestly expecting some nerfs towards the Oracle hero tree and bringing down some of their powered shield effects, but it seems like they just want a Discipline Priest meta. And I'm not totally against that. I think Discipline Priest is just a really fun healer to play, and it's honestly a fun healer to play against because it has a lot of interactions with it specifically. So bringing up the lesser represented healers, I think, could have been a good direction here, which they already did with Paladin. We saw Paladin in the most recent changes get bumped up. It's getting some Lightsmith changes, I think. So you could likely expand and maybe experiment with some different builds, but even if these different builds don't work, you still got a really solid build with Herald of the Sun. Preservation Evoker still remains at the top as well. It seems like it has such a huge weakness, though, against Subtlety Rogue that in tournament play you don't see it as much, because the tournament level rogues are just so fantastic and it has almost nothing to deal with that. But its representation on the ladder is crazy good. So I think it's likely going to stay in the same spot. Resto Shaman's really happy. It's getting a lot of buffs here, I think, with Healing Stream Totem buffs, and then its casted healing is getting buffs. So we saw Sea-Doo playing it a bit. It was struggling. It seemed like mana was more of an issue for it, though, but maybe the Healing Stream buffs can alleviate that type of pressure. So good direction for Resto Shaman. Mistweaver is harder to call. I think we're really waiting for 11.0.5 before Mistweaver starts to see like a huge resurgence, but these Master of Harmony changes could definitely push it up a bit from where it is. But I think until they add damage to the spec, which is coming in 11.0.5, that not too much is going to change there. And then Resto Druids, I think they just hate you. This is one dude that's still playing it. They hate you, but you're fighting defiantly. You're fighting the good fight despite that. And the reason I say they hate you is because no matter what happens, if they try and buff Resto Druid in PvE, you don't get that. That's not for you. You don't get that. No. That one's not for you. That's for PvE only. Lower rating Resto Druid has still decent representation. And then Holy Priest, I almost forgot, because there's literally none of you at 2100. Almost forgot about you. Resto Druid, I guess, is just maybe they don't want a Resto Druid meta because the Cenarian Ward buff is not going to do too much, because apparently Cenarian Ward is just not a significant amount of your healing. Perhaps the mana regeneration, though, could put you in a more competitive position. Much like Resto Shaman, it's just losing at the last second on mana. Maybe Resto Druid's mana changes could bump this up a bit. Holy Priest, they got big buffs in the last build, but I don't think we see anything for them in this one specifically. I don't know if it's just because Disc is so good, so nobody wants to even bother, but yeah, we don't. Holy Priest, you guys got forgot. You guys are like Kevin. You guys got forgot at home. Home alone. Holy Priest, you're home alone. I wish you the best of luck, but I don't imagine this number is going to change too much, given that Priest Disc didn't get nerfed and Holy didn't get buffed, so not a lot of attention there. But nonetheless, it's going to be a big meta shakeup on Tuesday, I think, for a lot of other roles. So I hope you guys enjoyed this PvP analysis, this PvP update, and kind of prediction moving into Tuesday. If you did, make sure to thumbs up the video. If you want to stay up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, then smash the subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated.